function based off of what you need, not based off of what the world tells you that you need. Hey friends, welcome to my channel or welcome back. My name is Antoinette Chanel and here I am posting another video. This video is actually a bit of a request. I had some people asking me what tips I could provide for securing one's personal peace in times of turmoil, in times of uncertainty. That's something I've done a couple of times. So I decided to put all of my suggestions, and they're not even really suggestions, it's not advice. I'm just simply telling you what I do in order to secure my own personal peace and protect my peace. You do what is conducive with your lifestyle and what works for you. So I'm gonna break this down into some chapters just to sort of organize my thoughts. And so my chapters will be roughly around these topics: professional life, good nutrition, regular movement, mental health, and the ideal you. So this is that vision of yourself that you see when you daydream about being the perfect version of yourself, even though perfection is not realistic or sustainable. So let's just jump in with chapter 1, talking about professional life. So at this point in my life, I used to work a very demanding full-time job that required a lot of commitment from me. I also worked in a very fast-paced job field that unfortunately is shrinking right now. So just to sort of lay out what that means, I was in a fast-paced, often competitive environment. I'm not really sure why it was competitive. I don't know what we were competing for, but I left that, as well as that field that I see is shrinking. In 5 years, I believe that we will be hearing about massive layoffs and massive turnover in that field, if it hasn't happened already by the time we get to, 2029? And so what this job did is it created a lot of anxiety for me in the evenings and in the early mornings, because I would come home and I was drained. I often was replaying a lot of the interactions that I was having at work over and over again long after I had left the office, because I wanted to be the best, I wanted to be successful, and that meant having to win favor with a group of people who I don't think I'm meant to work with. We aren't meant to work with everybody. If you think about the billions of people that are on this earth, you're not meant to get along with every single one of them. There's nothing wrong with identifying that some situations just aren't a fit for you. And for your own personal peace, your own mental health, getting out of those situations as quickly as possible is gonna serve you well. I also had to tell the truth about myself, which is that I don't like working full time. No, I wouldn't call myself lazy. I wouldn't say that I'm entitled or that I want everything handed to me. I just want a flexible employment arrangement, one where I feel like I can be the mother and the wife that I need to be, along with providing whatever it is that this employer wants from me. Most employers, in my experience, either want everything, your nights, your weekends, plus all the time that you spend with them there in the office, just commanding your full attention. Or if they don't want everything, chances are they probably aren't providing very much to you either. So they're not paying enough, they're not providing benefits, they're not providing any sorts of perks to the people who work there. Everybody's miserable. And my work stance, I recognize that as something that is largely individual. So again, that's why I said that this video is not really advice. This is just me talking about what works for me. These are the steps that I take. And one step I had to take very recently was restructuring what my professional life looked like, because that full-time environment and the requirement, the commitment that was necessary for that is not something that I'm willing to do or even capable of doing. So now I work a part-time job that pays very well, and I freelance on the side where I get to set my own rate in order to make employment work for me. Professionally, this makes me much happier because I also don't have to deal with a lot of the office politics. I don't have some insensitive boss breathing down my neck constantly. The bosses that I have are mainly my clients, and that's both in my part-time job as well as in my business. When I'm not working, all of that time is spent spent on recharging. So making sure that I am getting my fill of the things that are not work. And for me, this often looks like hiking, resting. I love my naps. Shout out to the nap ministry. Also connecting with my friends, with my loved ones, partaking in unique experiences such as painting or exercising or going to a museum. So the best tip that I can give to anybody who is wanting to make a change and they recognize that their professional life is an area where they need to make a change is maybe start by writing down the types of things that you like to do. What sorts of things professionally inspire you or make you feel motivated, and then try to figure out what career paths you can pursue that will allow you to get those things. I know that it can be intimidating to make changes to your employment or to your career field, especially when everybody, literally everybody, is running around talking about how this is the worst economy. Everyone is going to suffer because there's no jobs, productivity is down, blah, 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 blah. But your personal peace shouldn't be too expensive ever. So even if the experts are claiming that this is a bad time to make a job change, this is a bad time to try and regroup and switch career paths, if that's what you need to do, then do what you need to do. Function based off of what you need, not based off of what the world tells you that you need. Let's talk about nutrition. So overall, good nutrition helps me to feel better, not just physically, but also mentally as well. I find that I am not as stressed, I'm not as anxious, and I don't have as many tendencies and habits that I do in depression when I am eating well. And for me, eating well means lowering the processed foods, cutting down on the alcohol, cutting down on the sweets, lots of fresh fruits and vegetables. I'm somebody who eats meat, so I like to eat a lot of lean proteins, my favorite being salmon. I love to eat salmon. Also lean chicken, lean pork, those types of things. I'll usually pair those with either a sauteed vegetable or a salad of some sort. I am someone who has to avoid caffeine because I am very sensitive to it. So if I drink a regular cup of coffee, I'm like bouncing off the walls. You have to peel me off the ceiling. It's ridiculous. But also the caffeine makes my anxiety worse. So that's why I just avoid it altogether. If I really need a boost in the mornings, I might steep a bag of green tea, but then I will cut that with something else that's not caffeinated. So I'm really getting like half the effect of the tea bag. By nature, I'm somebody who doesn't eat a lot of sugar. That's just who I am. Now, this is not me demonizing people who like sugar or even claiming that candy is bad. Candy's delicious. I love me some Mike and Ike sours. But as I always say, everything in moderation. So if you're eating like that constantly, if that's the only source of nutrition that you're getting, then your body's probably going to break down because it needs additional nutrients that you're not giving it. I like to drink fruit smoothies. My favorite ingredients for my smoothies include mango, passion fruit juice, kale. I love kale just for keeping the system regular, keeping my digestion on track. I really, really like it. It's also packed with vitamins and nutrients as well. So if you're slipping it into things, then you can know that you are fortifying your body with the nutrients that it needs if you're working in extra helpings of kale and other fruits and vegetables too. Kale just happens to be one of my favorites. I do drink alcohol. I just tend to stick with beer and wine more readily these days just because it's easier on my body. I find I don't have as many repercussions when I drink beer and wine. I do love me a good margarita though. I just can't drink margaritas late. Tequila and me, we have a love-hate relationship. Like, I love a margarita, but if I wait too late to drink one, it's like something happens. I would say that one of the biggest notes when it comes to hydration though is just how important it is to make sure that you're getting enough ounces of water a day. So for some people, they think like, oh, you know, people drinking a gallon of water a day, those must be marathon runners or bodybuilders or just obsessive exercise freaks. But in actuality, we should all be drinking a lot of water. I personally try to do at least 100 ounces a day. I feel like that keeps me nice and regular, keeps me cleaned out, keeps me just, I don't know, it keeps my insides nice and squeaky clean, or at least that's how it feels. I try to do a minimum of 100 ounces a day, with a gallon being 128 ounces, so it's not far off from that. And most days I'm usually getting that. Something that's helpful for making sure that you're getting your ounces, if that's something that you want to work on, is getting a really good cup. I have a tumbler that is like 32 ounces, I think, and I love it because if I do 3 of those a day, then I know that I am pretty good for my ounces. Whereas if you had something smaller, running back to refill constantly might get monotonous, and it might actually deter you from drinking the water. Hey, and Stanley cups are very trendy, or so I've heard. Hydration is also important because hydration is the vehicle through which the vitamins and nutrients that are coming from your food, or even from the supplements that you're taking, get delivered to the cells within your body. So if you're dehydrated, then that stuff is gonna move much slower through your body. And I don't know about you, but I don't eat salads or take supplements or, eat these healthy foods so that I can get delayed gratification from it. I would like to get that benefit now. If you're feeling ill, you'll find that drinking water will also help with the healing process of sort of getting you through that cold, that flu, that virus, whatever it is. Hydration is very important. Hydration also supports regular movement. And when I say regular movement, I am referring to exercise. But I think that when I say exercise, or when people hear the term exercise, they think of like going hard, sweating it out. And that's not the only form of what exercise can look like. So if you're somebody who feels very turned off by the idea of working out because that's what you picture in your mind, I encourage you to explore some alternative methods for moving your body that can get you in shape, that don't require you to be huffing and puffing on a treadmill or an elliptical. And I will say that I am not always consistent with this. I try to work out 3 to 4 times a week if I can. Some weeks I do it, some weeks I don't. I mean, I was sick a couple of weeks ago, so I definitely wasn't working out. And there are also some days where I just don't feel like it, which isn't always the best attitude to have, but I do think that it's important that you get into the habit of knowing how to give yourself grace, so that when it's time for you to do so, you can do so very easily and readily. The worst feeling in the world is when you need to have your own back, but you aren't capable of doing so. So my personal favorite when it comes to movement is running. I ran my first half marathon earlier this year. I think I'm gonna definitely do another one, that's for sure. Running was more fun than I was anticipating, and I can't believe I just said that, but it's true. I actually really enjoy running. It's a part of my soul now. I'm one of those crazy runner people. But in addition to running, I also like to do yoga. I mentioned to you already that I like to go hiking. My family and I also like to take bike rides as a family, which is very fun. And I like to lift weights, which is important for women because bone density becomes an issue as we age, and lifting weights can help to maintain the density in your bones. So just something to think about, ladies. And if you're moving regularly, then that means that you need to be fueling your body. You also need to be hydrating your body. So this is where those ounces come in, very important again. If you're not hydrating yourself, then you're not going to be able to sustain yourself through a workout. It's also a good idea to be eating well so that you have some fuel to burn when you're doing that workout. And this is even for low impact workouts like yoga. You still are burning calories in all of that movement, and if there's nothing in your belly to burn, that can be good for weight loss, because that can mean that you are burning fat at that point, but I don't recommend making it a habit to emaciate yourself or to is there a term for that? Anyway, not feed yourself enough. I don't recommend not feeding yourself enough and then also embarking on a fitness journey, just because the two tend to go hand in hand. And as far as recipes are concerned and finding good foods that you can eat, Pinterest has been my best friend for all of those things. I recommend it if you're not on it already. Also, just the plain old internet, you know, type in a search for the ingredients that you have and some AI chatbot will tell you what you can make out of those ingredients. And you can be as specific as you need to be. You can tell it that you want something that is low in carbs because you're trying to watch your blood sugars. You want something that is not high in salt because you are trying to avoid hypertension. Staying active is a good idea because it doesn't get easier as you get older. So if you're watching this and you're in your 20s and you're like, oh, look at this old boomer over here. Actually, I'm not a boomer. I'm a millennial. My parents are boomers. Please don't call me a boomer. But oh, look at this old lady over here talking about how she ran a half marathon and she's proud of herself and exercise is important. Ha! First of all, if you think you're never gonna age, guess again. The opposite of aging, you know what that is, right? Second of all, I don't think that it's wise to assume that certain ailments or diseases or occurrences with one's health are strictly limited to a certain age group anymore. It used to be that, you know, people who had heart attacks were in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. They were of advanced okay, maybe 50 is not advanced age since that's the next decade that I'll be in. You know, they were older. They weren't people in their 20s and 30s. Now we've got people in their 20s and 30s who are having heart attacks and strokes and all these major medical emergencies. And it's like, okay, so it really doesn't matter how old you are. It's more about how are you taking care of yourself and how are you managing stress? How are you managing all of the competing demands that are in your life? All of those things, along with how much sleep you're getting too, will play a factor in just how at risk you are for chronic disease or these major medical developments. It's a good idea to be familiar with whatever it is that you might be medically predisposed to, and you can find that out by having a conversation with some of the older people in your family, such as your parents or your grandparents, aunts and uncles. For me, there is a history of obesity on both sides of my family. Very few instances of cancer or chronic illnesses like that, but lots of comorbidities with being associated with being overweight. So things like diabetes and hypertension and other issues that can be caused by being severely overweight. And so that's another reason why I am committed to exercise. That was actually part of why I wanted to do that half marathon, because I turned 40 earlier this year and I wanted to prove to myself as well as to some of my close friends that, you know, I'm not necessarily fading into obscurity just because I turned 40 and most of the other people in my family don't tend to age well. Thankfully, because of genetics, I haven't really had much of a weight issue personally. I tend to take after the other side of my family in that. And so I haven't had to struggle with that quite as much, but it's still something that I'm very mindful of in myself, as well as in my husband and my children. Obesity is not healthy for anybody. Understanding your family history can also inform you about addictions if you are someone who is predisposed to addiction. And last but not least, exercising regularly helps me to sleep better at night. So I usually have to be consistent about it. It's not just like a one-off thing where, hey, I exercised today, so now I'm gonna sleep really well. But if I've been in the habit for like a week, I notice that second week, I'm usually sleeping really, really well. I fall asleep faster. I stay asleep for longer chunks of time. And as somebody who has suffered from insomnia, that's huge. Mental health. I have been in therapy off and on for 20 years now. My first encounter with going to therapy that I had sought out for myself, not something that my parents had ordered, was when I was an undergraduate in college, because the service was free to all students attending my university. And obviously there was a learning curve with that. So with getting into therapy for the first time, I found that, hey, this is really awesome that this person is here to listen to me and help me decipher what the next course of action should be to help me solve these problems that I'm having, and also make me feel less alone for feeling anxious or for feeling depressed. Although at that time, I did not know that those were the things I was feeling. I just thought something was wrong with me. And so through this process, I had to learn that not everyone that you're matched with on the first go will be the most appropriate person for you to work with in therapy. Use my voice to say, thank you so much, but I don't think that we should meet again. And I'd like to maybe try meeting with somebody else from this practice who might be a better fit for the needs that I have. There are also different options for treatment when it comes to therapy. So certain therapists will specialize in different modalities of treatment, and you want to look into that as well, because whatever issue you're trying to solve, whatever obstacle you have, you want to make sure that the provider that you're working with is also able to treat you in a way that's going to make those things better and not exacerbate them. So don't be afraid to audition different therapists and to continue searching for someone until you feel like you have found the right fit. And you will know when you have found the right fit, because you'll find yourself sitting in therapy going, oh my gosh, I feel so understood right now. I currently have a therapist who does this for me, and she took the pictures of me that you're seeing on screen right now. I just wanted her to take a picture of me in my new skirt, but she said, you've grown so much and you're radiating today, so I want to take more pictures of you just to show as evidence of the hard work that you've been doing here. That's a great relationship. I love my therapist, but it took me a long time to find her. I think a big part of mental health that doesn't get talked about quite as much, or maybe not as honestly as it should be, is the associations that many of us are making. And when I say that, I mean the people, places, and things that we are choosing to associate ourselves with. I think for a lot of people, they see things primarily through the internet, social media and such, and they say, ooh, I want that. I want that kind of a lifestyle. This person is living the kind of life that I want to live. And there's nothing wrong with that. I do that all the time too. I think that it is useful to take cues from the people around us so that we know what it is that we like and what we're interested in, so that we know what sorts of goals we should be setting for ourselves. So no issue with that. But the problem is that in order to get those things, a lot of people think that they have to associate with certain people, certain environments, certain behaviors, and you don't necessarily have to. So if you want to live a soft, luxurious life, but those soft, luxurious friends are toxic, just keep the soft, luxurious life and ditch the friends. Stop associating with these people who are dragging you down and then causing you to have negative associations with this thing that you love or that you are aspiring towards. And sometimes the things and whatnot that we're aspiring towards and that we love are toxic too. You gotta be honest with yourself about that. So sometimes the partner who never seems to come through, who is never reliable, who doesn't ever have anything positive to say to you. Sometimes that might be the root of an issue too. Sometimes it's your family. And so if you have an association with something that is not healthy, something that is not conducive with a positive and healthy future for yourself, then that means that you have to cut that off. Boundary is here and I'm pushing you beyond it because you're not allowed in, basically. People get offended by that sometimes. People feel like, well, why are you rejecting me? Why are you pushing me out? I'm not the bad person. Truthfully, the healthy response to any boundary that you set is, okay, I respect that. Boundaries are put in place so that we don't get overwhelmed, so that we don't get overtaken. I mean, has anybody told you that? I hope so. Quick crash course on boundaries. Boundaries are not something that we create because we're trying to retaliate against people, because we're trying to piss people off or limit other people and what they can do. Boundaries exist so that we can make our own lives sustainable, so that we are not running ourselves ragged with social interaction and then collapsing on the floor at the end of the day because we are so depleted. Boundaries make it so that our time doesn't get monopolized by other people who want to make statements about what we should be doing and how we need to be out there doing stuff. That's what boundaries are for. And a lot of people, especially people who are toxic or people who are problematic, who you got to change your relationship with, they will view your boundaries as a threat. How dare you tell me that I can't because you don't like that. When in actuality, a lot of those people do the same thing all the time. They just have a problem with you when you do it, which is why the boundary needs to exist in the first place. And part of being able to set good boundaries is also recognizing what your triggers may be. And so this is listening to yourself. When you get that little pang inside your body upon meeting a new person who you're like, oh, I don't know about them, I don't know. If you listen to that, then that is you honoring yourself and recognizing that you're probably being triggered right now. If you ignore that, you are betraying yourself and therefore betraying your boundaries, betraying just so many parts of yourself. And I know a lot of us were taught to do this, you know, in the instance of getting along or making other people happy. But the truth is, if you feel like you're constantly being taken advantage of and nobody listens to your point of view, nobody values you, you don't have a place in your friend group or your family or, you know, your team or whatever, to be yourself or to express what you're thinking or feeling. If you're constantly feeling that, chances are you probably need some better boundaries. It's not everybody else's fault. At some point, it's you. You're the one who's giving away all of your freedom. You are betraying your time. You are betraying yourself. And one book that's really good at talking about the importance of boundaries and making sure that you secure your personal peace for your own peace of mind, okay? This isn't about anybody else, it's about you. But one book that I recommend is called Fuck No, and I don't remember the author's name right now, but I'll make sure that you guys have a screenshot up here so you can see it, so you can check it out for yourselves. It's a good book. Another piece of the puzzle for my mental health is my intellectual feeding. So that's just my fancy way of terming entertainment. I like to listen to audiobooks. I try to jump into a new one every other week if I can. Again, I'm gonna plug Libby. If you don't have Libby, then you need to get Libby. I don't know why you would pay for Audible when Libby is out here for free. I don't listen to podcasts, but that's just my personal preference. I know there are lots of people who listen to podcasts for the same reason I like to listen to audiobooks, which is to learn. Stuff You Should Know podcast is one of those that, you know, you turn that on, you're gonna learn something constantly. And it's actually pretty entertaining too. They frame it in a way that it's not boring, it's fun to listen to. I also organize my entertainment into categories. So I have some entertainment that I will watch that I know is gonna be stressful, suspenseful, you know, maybe it's like a mystery type of thing. I don't do horror films ever. I stopped watching horror films after I watched The Ring, Amityville Horror. I just don't do horror movies. Another category is fun. It can also be informative as well. There's a category for purely gossip, because, you know, I love my celebrity gossip just like the next girl. And then there's just mindless TV. Those are like the compilations of people being idiots in cars that my husband and I will watch at the end of the day as we are fading off to sleep. I organize my entertainment into categories mainly because I noticed that I was getting triggered by entertainment way too often before I did this. I am also of a demographic that if you're not careful, if I am not careful with what I consume, I can very easily stumble across content that is meant to disparage me and people who look like me. And I'm being very specific when I say this because I'm not even talking about the type of content that people put up about like hating Black people. Like that content is out there, but it's pretty easy to avoid. It's the other content that like passes itself off as like modern entertainment, but then all of a sudden they'll just start ragging on Black women because they need a viral moment. So like the Frickin' Frack podcast or Andrew Schultz, Andrew Tate, most of these podcast people that are out here, newer podcast people, let me say that, because podcasting used to be a very intellectual medium until the year 2020. And I'm not somebody who would readily seek out any content that's going to disparage me anyway. I personally never watched Kevin Samuels when he was alive. I know a lot of other Black women did, and you know, whether you were watching it just to see what he would say, or you were watching it because you were invested, or you were watching it because you were wanting to lend some sort of residual support to the Black women who you saw him disrespecting on that show, I think that the negative impacts are still there regardless. So even if you don't think you were internalizing those insults, you don't think you were internalizing the colorism, you probably are carrying some scars from what that toxic ass man was saying. And I don't engage in any of that. I also don't engage with people who like to watch that kind of content. So usually when I figure out that somebody is really interested in that type of content, that's usually when I'll stop talking to them, or they don't hear from me very much anymore, because I distance myself. Because if you can consume media that disparages me, disrespects my image, compares me to animals or even excrement and feel nothing, then you don't get to call me a friend or even an acquaintance. Also, I find that with a lot of like mainstream entertainment, and when I say mainstream, I mean entertainment that's coming from these larger companies, like these studios like Marvel, or, you know, the others, Lionsgate, others, etc. What I find is that they also like to either perpetuate stereotypes, or they just have these really awful portrayals of people who look like me, of Black women who look like me, and I don't appreciate the disrespect. I also don't like being assaulted by random nudity, random violence, like senseless stuff, and I'm finding that a lot of movies and television these days contains a ton of that stuff, and I'm not into it. So I like to use a website called DoesTheDogDie.com. DoesTheDogDie.com is an index of television shows and movies that will basically break down, like, are there any scenes with nudity? Is there any violence? Is there cursing? Are there racial slurs? Is there ableist language? Is there anti-LGBTQIA+? All of that. You can look all of that up on this website. I don't know who created this, but thank you so much. So this helps me to avoid a lot of shit that I don't want to see. And as such, entertainment can just be fun and lighthearted for me when I want it to be. It can be suspenseful when I want it to be. It can be gossipy when I want it to be. It can be mindless when I want it to be. But all of that helps to protect this. Another part of my intellectual feeding is connecting with good people. So I have a network of friends who, they don't all know each other and they don't all live in the same areas, but my friends are so amazing. I get to have inspiring intellectual conversations with them on the phone every now and then, because we talk when we can talk. We're all so busy. It always makes me feel so energized when I connect with them and I hear about the things that they're doing. I hear about the passions that they have and what they're working on. I hear about the curiosities that they have. It's affirming as a fellow human to get to connect with other humans that way. And I find that that also is very positive for my mental health in making me feel not so alone. It's very easy for me to get tunnel vision a lot of times with my anxiety and depression and think that the insults, the bad circumstances, the bad luck, the unfortunateness, all of that is only happening to me, and that it's somehow my burden to bear because I have now earned this and I am, I don't know, destined for failure by the universe. That's how it can feel when I get into a vacuum, into a bubble where I'm just focused on me and what I'm thinking and feeling and what's happening around me. But if I pull back from that and get out of that, I don't feel that way nearly as much, and connecting with other people, quality people, is one of the ways that I am able to avoid that trap for myself. And there are people in the world who want to connect. Go on Meetup, go on Eventbrite, find some of these social mixers and go to them and meet people. Get off the internet and go out into the world. I promise it's not the same as what it looks like on your computer or your phone screen. And I have to remind myself of this constantly. I also find that coloring, painting, making music, those types of things also feed me intellectually. They make me feel good about the fact that I'm not just here to take care of my kids and go to work, but I actually do other things too. I have other talents. As a human being, they're just nice. And you don't have to be good at these things in order for the benefits to come. Just enjoy what it feels like to push colors around on a piece of paper or a canvas, or to color in the cells in a coloring book, and suddenly now you have this colorful masterpiece on a page. Or just to feel what it's like to make notes come out of an instrument, even if it's not a song or a full chord, it's still making music. Last but certainly not least, for my mental health, I try to make sure that I am connecting with nature so that I can meditate. Now, nature isn't the only place where I meditate, but I find that my meditation tends to go really, really well when I do it in nature. I also find that I am able to hear myself more easily when I meditate in nature. I know people have a lot of theories about like what these routers do and these phones and these televisions and just all these things and how they emit these rays and whatnot. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not. I know that when I'm out in nature among the trees and the animals and on a nature trail and, looking at a beautiful body of water, I find that I am able to hear my own voice better, calm myself down better, regulate my body better, and it works for me. So I highly recommend if you haven't done it before. Meditation, though, is something that you can do anywhere. You can do this in your car, not while driving, please. You can do this in your car on a break. You can do this at your desk at work. You can do this when you sit up in bed in the morning. You can do this in the shower. You can do this as a passenger in the car with someone. You can meditate anywhere. It really is just taking that pause, finding stillness, and quieting everything. And if you've tried meditating before and you didn't get good results, practice, practice, practice. Okay, my final chapter is titled The Ideal You. And this is a little bit interactive because I'm gonna ask you to do a couple of things right now. First, we're gonna do something called Paint Perfect, which is not my term. It's a term that comes from somebody else, but picture what the ideal version of you looks like. Be specific about this too. What sorts of things does that person like to eat? Where do they work? Who are their friends? What do they see themselves doing in 5 years? And what do you see them doing in 5 years? Remember, this is the ideal version of you. Now, think about what your life looks like right now, right here in the present moment. Chances are, if you were envisioning an idealized version of yourself, it wasn't the same version that's sitting here right now. That's just human nature. But what is the gap? What is the difference between who that idealized version is and where you are right now? What's the gap? Because that's the ground that you're gonna need to cover. That's the distance to the glow up. So once you've done these things, once you've pictured what the ideal version is, you see where you are at, you see what the gap is, then it's about figuring out how to get here in the most efficient way possible. So for some, this is a college degree, finishing a program, getting a promotion, relocating to a new place, leveling up your network. Most opportunities are born out of someone who knew someone. Also, connecting with professionals who can help you to solve some of these issues that you might have. So if you are looking to solve some of the issues that you have in your mental health, connecting with a good therapist so that they can help you navigate that and get you over those gaps. If you recognize that you want to make a change to your body physically, maybe hiring a trainer or somebody who can work with you in the specific way that you need so that you can tone up, lose the weight, maybe work on a specific part of your body, maybe prep for a show, prep for a bodybuilding competition, whatever it is. Some people feel like they don't have a personal sense of style. There are plenty of people out here who would love to help you with nailing what your personal style is. Do you like polos and khakis, or are you more of a cargo pants and sweaters type person? They can help you find that. Even people who are single, who want to find a relationship, dating apps are not the only option that you have. There are actual matchmakers and dating coaches out here who can help to prepare you for what the dating world is like and maybe even match you with somebody who might be a good fit. Once you've identified ideal self, here's where I am, here's the ground that I need to cover, and here are some ways that I can cover it the most efficiently. Identify 3 ways that you can change your habits and start doing those. So for example, you might decide that you need to work out 3 to 4 times a week. That's my goal too. I like to work out 3 to 4 times a week. Don't always do it, but that's what I aim for. You might start off with that, and 2 months in, it's like, okay, this is second nature that I get up at 5 a.m., I go to the gym, I come home, I shower, I go to work. Or I come home from work, I go straight to the gym, I come home and I make dinner, and that's the end of my day. Whatever your routine is, once it becomes second nature, then you can sort of count it as being hardwired into your identity at that point, and you can introduce something else. I find that I am the happiest when I am both working on myself as well as living fully in myself. So the person who I am in the present moment is the result of what years ago Antoinette was dreaming of and had a vision for. And enjoying that is sort of how I do her a solid. Like, hey, 2015 Antoinette, I know you always dreamed about living in the mountains, and now here I am hiking in the mountain. But that's not to say that you don't want more. I think that it's perfectly okay to take stock of your life at any given moment and decide that these are the things I don't like and I want to improve. Don't let people get in your head about like always wanting more. There's nothing greedy about that. You're allowed to always want more for yourself. And so in that way, I am enjoying my life, the one that I worked hard to build for myself in this present moment, but I am still also inching my way towards that future reality that I've been dreaming of because it's a goal of mine. Personally, I like existing in both these realms. That makes me feel like I am fulfilling my purpose and also like I am living wholly and presently. I don't ever want to take this life for granted because I worked very, very hard for every single thing I have. So those are all of my little tidbits, my suggestions, the things that I do. Again, I really didn't intend for this to be an advice video. I really just wanted to sort of lay out what it is that I do in order to protect my personal peace. These are the things that have been working for me, especially over the last 4 years. And if you know me personally, you know exactly why the last 4 years have been so important in my life. So I hope that these are helpful for you. I'd love to hear from you as far as what sorts of things you're implementing. I'd love to also sort of cheer you on as you do those sorts of things, because nobody should be embarking on a journey of personal growth and discovery and achievement by themselves. I recommend having some sort of a cheering section, even if it's just you and one other person. Please feel free to get in touch with me at my socials that are listed here on screen. And I will be back with another video very, very soon. Thank you for tuning into this one, and take care.